All right, let's dive into the life of, well, I think you could say a true American icon, right? Abraham Lincoln.
Absolutely.
You know, you're here because you want to go deeper than just the surface level facts, and luckily so do we. We're going to be using this fascinating excerpt from Life of Abraham Lincoln, a biography by Sam Morgan,
Great book.
to try and understand how this guy, from like the humblest of beginnings, becomes the legend we know today.
I mean, it's a story that really never gets old, you know?
Yeah.
Morgan's account, it really captures just how important Lincoln's early life was to shaping him, you know? Born in a one-room log cabin out in the Kentucky wilderness. I mean, can you imagine that?
No.
The level of, like, hardship, just trying to survive.
It's hard to even fathom.
It's mind-blowing. And then, you know, on top of all that, he loses his mother when he's only 9.
It's hard to imagine, like, the emotional impact that would have on a kid. But Morgan doesn't just focus on the hardship, you know. He introduces us to this figure who, like, just this essential role in Lincoln's development. His stepmother, Sarah Bush Johnston Lincoln.
Oh, yeah, Sarah.
Oh, what a woman.
I think what's so amazing about her is that she really saw in young Abraham this thirst for knowledge.
Totally.
You know, and she nurtured it. His father, understandably, focused on just getting by, right?
I assume.
The day-to-day.
Yeah.
But Sarah, she brought him books, she encouraged him, she just believed in his potential.
And that's what made the difference, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it just makes you wonder, like, how many other brilliant minds are out there? You know, just waiting for someone to believe in them, to give them that chance.
It's such a powerful thought, and it leads perfectly into, like, the next chapter in Lincoln's life.
Right.
His commitment to educating himself. Yeah. Like, this is a guy who would walk miles to borrow books.
I know. It's crazy.
Can you imagine doing that today?
No way.
And the books he chose, you know, they give us such a fascinating glimpse into, like, how his mind was developing. I mean, we're talking the Bible, Aesop's Fables,
Classics.
Robinson Crusoe, Pilgrim's Progress.
Oh, yeah, Pilgrim's Progress.
These weren't just, you know, stories to him.
Right.
These were shaping his entire worldview.
Absolutely. I think each one, like, you know, contributed to his sense of morality.
Totally.
His understanding of human nature, like, you know, good and bad, his sense of adventure even.
Yeah.
But there's one book that Morgan picks out as being especially impactful, and that's Weems' Life of Washington. Wow. And in particular, the story about young George Washington chopping down that cherry tree and confessing to it.
Right.
And I think as simple as that story might seem, it really instilled in Lincoln the importance of honesty and integrity.
Right.
Like, that was paramount to him. And of course, you know, later on that becomes like his defining trait, right? Honest Abe.
It's so interesting how these early stories that, you know, we might think of as like simple children's stories really plant the seeds.
Yeah.
For you know, how his character developed.
For sure.
But as we all know, even for a future president, life's not a straight shot to success.
Right.
Lincoln moves to New Salem, Illinois. And let's just say his early attempts at a career weren't exactly, presidential.
True. He had his share of setbacks and failures, but I think what's really important is how he reacted to those failures.
Right.
You know, what he learned from them. So he runs for the Illinois State Legislature and loses. And you can imagine, for a young, ambitious guy like Lincoln, that had to be, you know, a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But it actually turned out to be a really, really valuable experience for him.
How so?
It forced him to get better at connecting with people, networking, to really think about, like, strategy and politics.
Yeah.
And really understand the needs of the people that he wanted to represent.
So it's almost like these early losses were like these necessary stepping stones.
Yeah, I think so.
Pushing him towards, you know, a deeper understanding of himself.
For sure.
And the world around him.
Exactly. And this wasn't just in politics.
Oh, right.
This also happened in his early legal career, which was also like a real proving ground for him. I mean, don't forget, he was a self-taught lawyer. He was constantly having to prove himself. And Morgan describes how quickly he gained this reputation for his honesty, his eloquence, and how sharp and logical he was in the courtroom. And there's this great story about, it's called the Almanac Trial, that I think really demonstrates this, his dedication to justice.
That one really stuck out to me. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so picture this. Lincoln is defending this guy who's accused of murder, right?
Yeah.
And there's this key witness who claims that they saw the crime happen by the light of the moon. But Lincoln, being Lincoln, he pulls out an almanac. And he shows that the moon was actually too low in the sky for the witness to have seen anything.
Wow.
And his client acquitted. It's just this perfect example of Lincoln's like legal genius.
Nice.
And his just like total commitment to the truth. And I think it really says a lot about the kind of leader that he would become.
Yeah, it really does. So we've got this image of Lincoln now, self-made, resilient,
right,
morally grounded. I have a feeling this story's about to get a lot bigger.
Oh, you have no idea. Now Lincoln's ready for the national stage.
Yeah.
And that is where things get really, really interesting.
Let's dive into that next chapter then. This is where we start to see Lincoln emerge as a national figure, a voice of reason
Yes.
and conscience in a nation that's really on the brink of tearing itself apart.
Absolutely. It's 1860. The nation is just like completely fractured over slavery.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party, they're a mess. Can't even agree on a candidate.
Right.
Which, creates this crazy opportunity for Lincoln.
And Morgan, he describes how Lincoln's campaign, it really becomes like this masterclass in strategic thinking.
Yeah.
His stance on slavery, like morally, he was firm.
Right.
But compared to some in his own party, he was considered moderate.
Right.
And that let him appeal to a wider range of voters, which was like key to him winning.
It was huge. Absolutely crucial. But the South, they were not happy. Not one bit.
Right.
I mean, several states seceded right away, formed the Confederacy, and suddenly Lincoln's facing this crisis unlike anything we've ever seen before. A nation at war with itself.
It's an insane task.
It is.
And Morgan highlights, how tough it was for Lincoln at first just to find competent military leaders.
Right.
Like the first Battle of Bull Run, that was a huge defeat for the Union. Really showed like how unprepared the army was.
Totally.
And that there was no real like strategy in place.
Yeah.
And even McClellan's Peninsula campaign, which started out strong.
Right. Seemed promising.
It eventually just stalled.
Stalled out.
And, the North is just getting more and more frustrated.
Yeah. A lot of uncertainty. What's incredible, though, is how Lincoln, he just kept learning,
Right.
adapting. He realized, like, we need a bolder approach, militarily and politically. And he understood that, to win this war, it wasn't just about military might. You needed the people on your side.
It needed their support.
100%.
And I think that brings us to like one of the most pivotal moments of Lincoln's presidency.
Absolutely.
Emancipation Proclamation. I mean, this was bold,
Oh, yeah.
even radical. Declaring slaves in the Confederacy free in the middle of a war, that's a huge gamble.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he could have lost everything.
He could have.
And he knew it. He risked alienating those border states that were still with the Union.
Right.
And really, pushing the South further away.
Yeah.
But he knew he had to do it. He knew slavery had to end. And that this would change everything.
And make it about like human freedom.
Yes. Equality?
And it's crazy to think about like the pressure he must have been under making that decision.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't forget, like, not everyone loved the Emancipation Proclamation.
Oh, no, not at all. Especially in the North. You had people who were dead set against it,
Right.
called for peace no matter what the cost, saying that it was, going to make the war last even longer.
More bloodshed.
Yeah.
And those voices, they got louder as the war dragged on.
Yeah.
By 1864, when Lincoln was up for re-election, he was getting attacked from all sides.
Yeah, he was. I mean, the radical Republicans thought he wasn't being tough enough on the South.
Right, right.
And then you had the Democrats who just wanted to make peace with the Confederacy any way they could.
It's like he was fighting a war on multiple fronts. Against the Confederacy, sure.
Yeah.
But also like against his political rivals. And even people in his own party.
Yeah, it had to be exhausting. But then, turning point. Sherman captures Atlanta. Huge victory for the North. Really boosts morale.
It's like everyone remembers that victory is possible.
Exactly.
And it paves the way for Lincoln to win a second term.
Yeah. And in that second term, we see Lincoln like really step up as a wartime leader.
He becomes more assertive,
Yeah.
more strategic in how he approaches the war.
Yeah.
And finally, he finds the right generals, Grant and Sherman, who, shared his vision that
Yeah.
the Union had to win decisively. But I think, what stands out is that he never lost sight of like the big picture.
Right.
It wasn't just about winning the war. It was about preserving the Union and doing it, in a way that led to healing and reconciliation.
That's so important. Even with everything going on, the horrors of war all around him, Lincoln never gave up on the idea that the nation could come back together.
He believed in it.
He did. And you see this in his plans for Reconstruction,
Right.
which focused on leniency, forgiveness.
And not revenge.
Exactly.
Which makes it even more tragic that, he wasn't there to see it through.
It really is. Just days after the Confederacy surrenders at Appomattox,
Right.
Lincoln is assassinated at Ford's Theater. Devastating loss. For the country, sure, but I think even more so for that dream of reconciliation that he was fighting for.
And it makes you think, like, how different would Reconstruction have been if he had lived?
Oh, it's impossible to say for sure.
Yeah.
But, without Lincoln there was this void in leadership.
Right.
And the path to healing, it became so much harder, so much more uncertain.
I guess it's a reminder that even the most visionary leaders, they're still human.
They are.
And things happen.
They do.
But even though he's gone, Lincoln's legacy, it's still with us.
Oh, absolutely.
His words, his actions, his whole being,
yeah,
that continues to inspire
yeah,
and challenge us. And that's what we're going to talk about next. How did Lincoln's words, they went beyond just the time he was living in and became these timeless statements about the American spirit.
Yeah. How do they still speak to us today in a world that's dealing with its own set of problems? That's a conversation we need to have.
We've explored Lincoln's journey, from those humble beginnings all the way to becoming a wartime leader. But powerful as those actions were, I think sometimes, words, they have this way of
for sure.
echoing through history and just shaping the very soul of a nation.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's got to be true of Lincoln.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing how much his speeches still resonate with us today, way after, the events that inspired them.
I know.
The Gettysburg Address, 272 words, that's it. And he completely reframed the whole purpose of the Civil War. It went from being about preserving the Union to, this fight for human equality.
It's crazy how powerful those words are. Even now.
Yeah.
Government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's like...
It's perfect.
Yeah, he nailed it.
He did.
In like, what? A 2-minute speech?
Amazing. And it's not just Gettysburg.
Right.
The Emancipation Proclamation, I mean, technically it's a proclamation, not a speech, but it had the impact of, a moral earthquake.
Totally.
Right. It completely shifted the foundation of the nation. It said, freedom and equality. These aren't just, ideas.
Right.
These are rights that you fight for, that you got to secure.
And he believed in that.
He did.
So strongly. Even in the chaos of war.
I know. And then it's amazing. Just weeks before his death, he gives his second inaugural address.
Yeah.
And it's so somber and reflective.
Like he almost knew.
Yeah, almost like a premonition.
Right.
What gets me about that speech is there's no, gloating.
Yeah, you'd think.
The war's almost over.
They're about to win.
Victory is in sight, but Lincoln's not like, I told you so at all. He's talking about healing. Yeah. About bringing the country back together after all this division, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Yeah. Those words, they feel as relevant today as they did back then.
I know.
It is crazy.
Yeah, it's that forward thinking, right? That focus on unity, on coming together. Yeah. That makes Lincoln such a timeless figure. He wasn't just leading them through this crisis. Oh. He was shaping what America could be.
Exactly. His vision, it went way beyond just ending slavery. Yeah. He wanted a society where everyone had a chance.
A real chance.
A real chance. Didn't matter your race, your background. And honestly, it's a vision we're still working towards.
I know.
Like a reminder that we're not done yet, Building a more perfect union, it's a process. It's ongoing.
It doesn't stop. And his influence, it goes so much further than his own words.
For sure.
Think about how many speeches and movements and protests have been inspired by Lincoln.
Countless.
I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. giving the I Have a Dream speech at the Lincoln Memorial.
Right there.
It's like this direct connection. Yeah. This legacy that just keeps getting...
Passed down.
Passed down.
Yeah. And it shows you how powerful his message was, that he was able to like really capture what America's all about,
Yeah.
equality, justice, opportunity. And he did it in a way that just, it breaks through time. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. His words still hit home.
And those are lessons we can all learn from.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're leading a company,
Right.
a family, or just trying to be a better person. Lincoln reminds us that empathy, integrity, and just being willing to learn and grow.
Those never go out of style.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't. So what's the takeaway from all this?
I think it means that real leadership, it's not about power.
Right.
It's about serving something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
It's about having the guts to make the tough calls, even when they're not popular.
Even when people don't like it.
Exactly. And it's about, learning from your mistakes, learning to roll with the punches, and never forgetting that every choice you make, it affects people.
It has an impact.
Yeah. And I think it's also about understanding that words, they have power. Right?
For sure.
They can inspire, they can bring people together, they can actually change the world.
I mean, Lincoln's words prove that.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the life and legacy of Abraham Lincoln. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Wouldn't you say? From log cabin to legend. I mean, his story, it really shows us what you can do when you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
When you keep learning and when you never give up hope for a better future.
Could have said it better myself.
But before we go, I will leave you with one last thought to chew on.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about Lincoln's successes.
Yeah.
His resilience.
Yeah.
His place in history.
Right.
But what about his failures? What about those times when he messed up?
Yeah.
When he hit a roadblock? When he was disappointed?
Right.
How did he pick himself up and keep fighting for what he believed in?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And we encourage you, keep learning, keep questioning.
Yeah.
And keep finding inspiration from the amazing life of Abraham Lincoln.
Absolutely.